And we're live. Welcome back to the LOOPCast. Today, the gang is back together.
Woo!
I'm joined by Josh Mercer and Eric Ahern, and we are fresh off of Independence Day. I hope you all had a great break. I know that I did. Came back refreshed. Didn't pay attention to much news last week, so I had to do a little extra research, but it turns out a lot of it was Biden related. Seemingly, he can't really string. He's like addicted to bad interviews, I think is the takeaway over the last couple days. I actually was going to come in hot to this episode talking about that Stephanopoulos ABC interview last week, but it appears that the new strategy is to call into the friendliest outlets possible, use notes, and still bomb doing interviews, which we just saw it with MSNBC. So we're going to cover that. We're going to be talking about a few hot button issues. We got JD Vance and Rubio on abortion. We're going to have a different take, I think, than most there. We're going to talk a little bit Euro elections, and then finally, we got to talk about Vigano. That's been going on, and a little bit over break. So we want to discuss that today as well. Josh?
And we're so thankful people had a wonderful Independence Day, and they watched our special Loopcast on Heroes and Villains, and a whole lot of vindication in the comments for yours truly.
They were loving Mercer.
No, that's wrong, because you just cherry-picked the ones that you liked, and you said vindication under. I saw them. I went to the comments. There was plenty of comments coming, Erica, and my way. We just didn't go to the comments and vocalize. But Josh, I appreciate you came in last, so you had to do that. But yeah, if you want to check that one out, that's the one before this.
I'm last with the intern, but first amongst the people. I'm okay with that, folks. That's okay.
I think moral of that story is we found a new thing to do for pre-recorded episodes. It seems like people really liked it. We're going to keep going. Send in suggestions too. That was kind of fun to pick out a prompt. We are people that have various interests. Movies being.
And I have to say, my kids loved the snake draft movies because it was an episode I actually let them watch because we didn't talk about trans surgeries for kids. So they were like, we can watch it. It was great. So yeah, more of that. Let's do it.
And they all cheered when you said St. Thomas More was your.
They did.
Favorite
they all
villain,
cheered.
which even my mom texted me. It was like, that's kind of insane. Like she can never get in the movie. But anyway, we're not here to talk about my mom's thoughts on movies, although she's well versed.
Sorry, Janet.
So let's get into some Biden blow up. And first off, if you want to help out the program, subscribe here, leave us a like, head over, give us a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Best way to help us out. So thank you. All right, let's get into this interview here. So basically, last week we had, as a way to basically dissuade the doubters, I'm going to go do a primetime interview with George Stephanopoulos on ABC. Needless to say, it did not go very well. One of my favorite lines from it was, which the Democrats really
I disagree, but
caught on to. If I could say my favorite line, though, before I get to you, Josh, what would happen if you lose? Like, how would you feel if you lose to Donald Trump? He said, well, as long as I do my best, that is what's important. And, that's a very T-ball answer to running for the president, and people didn't like that very much. But Josh, I'd like to hear your thoughts. Before we get into the MSNBC one, what did you think about the ABC interview?
Well, first of all, obviously, I can't let it not go noticed. George Stephanopoulos is a former Clinton advisor, so this is, a total partisan Democrat. He's gonna be in favor of the Democratic team no matter what he does. But I think I guess I don't know if it's a hot take. My take from this interview is that he didn't do great because he still kind of mumbles his way through, gives kind of blasé answers, still a little slow in the uptake. But he didn't bomb it so bad that it was like, you can't continue with this guy. So the people who still had doubts about Biden, will have even more doubts. But he probably did just well enough that he could convince his people, say, yeah, the debate was a bad night, but I did this interview and we're moving on.
Yeah, I was just going to agree with you, Josh, because I think one of the analysts after the conversation aired was saying, like, for the Democrats, this was probably, for the party, this was the worst possible outcome because there was no clear path forward coming out of Stephanopoulos. Some people were probably hoping that the president would freeze and bomb so that then they could say, look, it's obvious we got to go with Kamala, we got to go 25th Amendment, but it wasn't coming out of the interview. And yeah, he doesn't look good. And I'm still really nervous that he's running the free world, quote unquote, but it wasn't bad enough for any clarity to be gained by the interview. And it opened it up for yet another interview to try again. Try again.
Yeah, although I have to say, maybe speaking to the replacement theory people, the comments were left on this interview, which is very interesting because ABC and especially these outlets, when they go to YouTube, they always turn these off. And so everyone noticed that in the comment section, like, oh, wow, comment section's on for this one. Some of the questions were tough. I didn't think he pulled. He didn't lob softballs. He didn't pull anything. I mean, obviously, you're able to edit this interview. This wasn't a live interview. They aired it live, but they edited this up, no question. So I was still like surprised, especially from Stephanopoulos, as you said, Dem Operative and ABC, kind of going tough on him here. And I think maybe speaking to the concerns of people that want to replace him, as there were high-level Democrats calling for his ouster, as we see. But you come to today, and this happened right before the show. So Joe Biden called into Morning Joe, an MSNBC program we've talked often about. Morning
Joe Scarborough.
This program.
It's actually the show Biden watches.
Yes. And so he goes on the show, and I have a few clips. So let's start off with that first one. I think this this really sets where a lot of Democrats are with Joe Biden here.
Now for something a little different, and from inside the White House, we have a special guest joining us now, the 46th President of the United States and presumptive Democratic nominee Joe Biden, calling in to Morning Joe right now. Good morning, sir.
Hey, Mika, I'm more than presumption. I'm going to be the Democratic nominee.
Oh.
Uh-oh.
It's to the letter that we just.
Oh my gosh. And Joe Scarborough's face during that, he's just trying to be super deadpan. And he's like,
well,
this is the Joe. He has to be. This is the Joe Scarborough who 2 months ago went on and said, I swear, this is the best version of Biden ever. He is sharp
like a razor.
He's
sharp.
like a razor. And now Joe Scarborough is sitting there letting his co-host introduce the president of the United States and call him the presumptive nominee. This would have been unthinkable 2 weeks ago. And and Biden just be like, the woman doth protest too much, to quote Shakespeare, because that's what I do.
Yeah, so it appeared as though, so this is how it started. It started contentious, of course. And I think the new strategy is let's hide him, have him call in, give him notes. I'm sure there's a team full of people in this room. And even with all that help, it's like,
no, he says it during the interview. He said, I'm reading from my notes. You can hear the president say that at one point in the interview. He's listing off Trump's lies, and he's like, I'm reading from my notes. Fake story. Like, it was so awkward.
Yeah, and you hear him shuffling the papers.
Oh my gosh.
It's bad.
Yeah.
But speaking of too, I mean, you even get reports. So all the media hits have been interesting. I was out last week. I'm not sure exactly what was talked about. I was enjoying vacation, as hopefully many of you were as well. But there was a report that, not even a report, a reporter said that she had to submit questions to President Biden to do a radio interview, and then she got to pick 2 of the questions to ask him that he knew about already. Now,
yes, this is
as someone who does interviews, this isn't how interviews go.
No, that's not journalisming at all. No, it was actually 2 radio hosts from local stations who went on and they did an interview explaining this experience. But they had been recruited by the Biden White House to do 2 back-to-back interviews with him after the debate as sort of a proof that he's still got it, like he's still with us. And these two radio hosts said, we received a list from the White House of 8 questions, and we approved of them. And the reporter's like, you approved of them? So they were pre-written? And the woman was like, yeah, they were pre-written and I approved them. And it's not journalisming, but it was presented to the public as these spontaneous conversations with Joe after his debate performance. And that is not what happened. Just the mendacity.
As much of this
overwhelming.
But it's not new. I mean,
not
this is, last year he did a press conference and someone took a photo and he's holding this card in his hand, and it's got the picture of the photographer from the LA Times, even how to pronounce her name. Okay, that's fine. If all the card said was, here, call on this person, 2nd row, 3rd seat back, and this is how you say her name. If that's what it was, fine. But that's not what it was. It was actually the question she was going to ask. So he got all of the questions pre-screened, and he calls on the reporters with the questions that he wants that are already pre-approved. This has been going on for this. This is not a new thing. We were complaining about this, a year ago or whatever it was when this first came out, and the media was like, la 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 la. I don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
So like this idea that now they feel like we've been duped. Like this is what drives me crazy. That the left wing Washington press corps have always considered themselves like the guardians of democracy. And they were totally okay with a president of the United States, leader of the free world, able to pre-screen the questions and call the reporters who give the questions that he already knows what they're going to say and he can already have his answer for it. Absolutely 0% of the U.S. population considers that to be acceptable. No one thinks that's okay. And yet the sycophants and stenographers in the corporate left-wing media think it's perfectly fine.
Right. And that was even before he had the excuse of debilitating dementia, right? Like now everyone's that was like, we're just going to orchestrate this and he's going to know exactly what he wants to say. Now they're still orchestrating it, but they can fall back on, well, he has dementia and it's all. So when he finally does step down, which I think eventually they're going to give him an offer he can't refuse, and he is going to. I'm putting it out there. I think it's going to be like, look, we're going to make the convention all about Joe Biden. We're going to celebrate your legacy, and you're going to hand it to Kamala, or we will destroy the memory of you.
Erica, the letter to
no way. He's digging in. He's not going to give up.
The letter to Hill Democrats that Jill Biden wrote for him this morning is saying otherwise. Says the question of how to move forward has been aired for over a week now, and it's time for it to end.
He has to say that, whether or not, and we talked about this earlier on a call, right, Mercer? He has to keep saying that, even if he is slowly figuring out how to exit gracefully to preserve his legacy and to become this sort of like the hero who gave it all up and handed it to the first Black woman president.
That's what it's about. He tried his best.
Exactly. He's going to try his best. But even he has to keep saying, until he actually announces he's withdrawing, he has to keep saying, I'm going for it all the way, Joe, because he can't risk losing his legacy. He would hate to be the guy who just dropped dead. I don't think one point in the can I just sidetrack for a second?
Sidetrack.
One point in the interview with Stephanopoulos, he starts saying, Stephanopoulos is like, what if Hakeem Jeffries came to you? What if Chuck Schumer came to you and they said, and Joe goes, if the Lord Almighty came down and told me to resign, I might, or something along those lines. And then he's like, but he's not coming. And I'm just sitting there listening to this like pretty blasphemous statement. I'm like, the Lord Almighty is coming, Joe. We're watching it. He's coming for you. He comes for us all. But no, it's
Josh retort.
That's not blasphemy itself. If a politician says I'm not going to change my mind on this unless God himself tells me to, like, I don't consider that to be blasphemy. I don't think that's, but I think he stays in. I think he's going to dig in his heels. I think Jill Biden, the queen, doesn't want to give up power, and Hunter Biden's the one that's whispering in his ear. And what do? Like, he's got 95% of the delegates. They can keep this pressure. So far, you've had like 4 or 5 House Democrats out of 200 that have actually said he should step aside. The other 195 haven't said squat. And today's the first day where they all kind of get back from this July 4th recess, Independence Day recess. And they're going to be asking these guys, I guarantee you what's happening right now as we speak, reporters are running all over the Capitol and they're trying to find any House Democrat they can. Sir, what do you think? Should he resign? And they're all going to have their canned answer. And it's going to be something along the lines of, Biden's our nominee. I support the nominee. Even if privately they didn't want him to go, I don't see a cascade happening here. Just don't see it.
Yeah. Did you guys read that article about it feels like reporters are now comfortable criticizing Biden, which is wild because before that was just not the case. And we talk about these.
Which article,
obvious,
Tom?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
We talk about these very.
It's open season. That's
right.
what I'm saying. Like, that was what we were talking about before. Like, the press conferences were more choreographed than World Wrestling Federation, or now it's World Wrestling Entertainment. Like, it's like such a joke. Like, it's totally choreographed. At least the thing is, people who are in the audience know, like, wrestling isn't real, but they enjoy the show.
Did you just ruin it for someone? You could have ruined it for someone.
Yeah.
I don't think
possible.
so, bro.
No, so I'm talking about I mean, just a brutal article. And I'm digging for it now. I put it in 2024. It was about, it was a female reporter.
Hell hath no fury like a reporter scorned.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Love it.
It was a reporter who was critical
More
on him in
Shakespeare.
2020.
We are so classical today. Can I just, yeah. All right. Good job.
Jeez. Okay. Chill with the Shakespeare. It was, she was
Hey, I
basically
invoke
just,
Shakespeare in my villains. I'm not going to lie to you.
all right, we got
Quote
I'm
this
trying
like
to
it's
get
going
Tom out. I'm trying to
this
get
one,
Tom
go
off
back
track.
and
I don't
vacation.
care.
it's
I'm
like
reckless today.
It's almost like I'm trying to do a job and I'm being sabotaged by the very people that I'm trying to do this job with. So
We love you.
all good. A reporter basically wrote about meeting him in a basement at a function and him just being like otherworldly, like dead. And you would have to think at some point in the last 6 months, this would have been known. And now people are writing about it. So I think that fuels a lot of the questions about replacement. I did want to bring up, because Josh brought this up in an episode a long time ago. My memory's decent. Dean Phillips. Do you remember Dean Phillips, Josh?
Oh, yes. The most vindicated Democrat in America right now.
So a part of this a part of the letter to the Hill Democrats, they talked about, I won the primary. I was elected. I've won it fair and square. Like laughably false. Like as if somehow there's this big primary in the Democrats and they
As if there
fought it
was
out.
a primary, right?
And he's like, the one opponent I beat was so lonely, didn't get any support. And he's like, he was the opponent saying he's too old. It's a huge problem that he's too old. And yes, he wasn't taken seriously, but he should have been. Talk about the most vindicated man in America.
Yeah.
So yeah, we should have listened to Dean Phillips when we had the chance. We'd be
I
in a
love
different
Dean
situation.
Phillips. Wasn't he the one he was in Manchester, New Hampshire, and he was going to hold a rally and no one showed
He had
up?
Dunkin' Donuts
Dunkin'
and
Donuts.
coffee,
Yeah,
and no one even showed up.
I mean, that's saying something
I'd
up there.
have showed up for you,
I
buddy.
would've showed
just
up and
to listen.
talked, man. Yeah, look up
Give me
Dean
the
Phillips,
Dunkin'.
man. He was right. All of those articles.
I mean,
were
he's
correct.
still a terrible congressman. He's my parents' congressman, but
Okay,
Anyway.
so I think we've covered the Biden blow up. I mean, we're going to continue to talk about
It
this.
just continues, yeah.
But we have some other
I'm
topics.
I'm saying he's still the nominee. He's going to do it.
Okay, and
That's
we'll have
my
to see.
call.
So
Drawing the line.
I was,
But I
actually,
do feel like my previous prediction that Donald Trump would actually win the popular vote. I feel more and more vindicated with that
Yeah.
prediction. We'll see what happens, but that seemed rather bold when I first threw that down. But
So
No
speaking
one's
of,
challenging. Yeah.
we
Sorry.
all good. I was in Milwaukee actually this past weekend. I was in the airport. First thing that greeted me when I landed was the Republican convention, and a few funny things on that. One, the sign was made by the Heritage Foundation, in which Trump just publicly disavowed Project 2025, which is a Heritage product. And then number two, I was driving out of the rental car place, and there was a big billboard, and it was I think it was paid for by Trump. It was like, Trump loves Milwaukee. Like, I have many great friends in Milwaukee, because the big slur was that Trump said he hated Milwaukee or something. And I was like, this is just how much of politics is just like toddler speak. Like, I heard them say that he hated Milwaukee. I'm going to say that I love Milwaukee and I'm going to buy billboards. And I'm sure it probably is convincing to a certain degree. But we do have a convention coming up, and there's two voices that have been getting a lot of criticism, J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio. Many consider to be top of list for a vice president candidate. And both had clips in which they were talking about abortion, which very relevant to many Catholic voters, Christian voters across the country. And I think many were disappointed. So I just want to watch the clips before we get into the commentary on it, because we have our thoughts. But let's start with that JD clip. And at the same time, I need to plug in my computer. It's currently going to die.
On the question of the abortion pill, what so many of us have said is that, look, we certainly don't. The Supreme Court made a decision saying that the American people should have access to that medication. Donald Trump has supported that opinion. I support that opinion. I think it's important to say that we actually have to have an important conversation in this country about what our abortion policy should be. Donald Trump is the pragmatic leader here. He's saying most abortion policy is going to be decided by the states. We want to make it easier and more affordable for young women and parents to have families to begin with. We want to lower housing costs, eliminate the surprise medical bills that so many families see after they have a baby.
So,
that's the Trump and Republican approach to this issue. Meanwhile, Joe Biden wants taxpayer-funded abortion up to the moment of birth. It's so crazy to me how the Democrats frame this as Republicans. Just let me finish, Kristen. They frame Democrats as being reasonable and pragmatic, when in reality,
Senator,
Republicans are the one trying to find some common
Senator,
ground
as
here.
you know, very few abortions take place later in pregnancy, and almost always because there is a
So let's
medical
get rid of them.
emergency.
Mm-hmm.
I know Trump is trying to distance himself from Project 2025, but we have to point out that a number of people who are involved with it are former Trump officials, Ben Carson, Peter Navarro, Russ Vought, and others. But just to be clear, you support mifepristone being accessible.
Yes, Kristen, I do. But again, on the Project 2025 issue, what the media and the Democrats are trying to do is attach its most unpopular elements to the Trump administration. It's a 900-page document. I guarantee there are things that Trump likes and dislikes about that 900-page document, but he is the person who will determine the agenda of the next administration. All he said very explicitly is, I am in charge of the next administration because I'm the person running for president. It's just important to make that clarification.
So there you have it.
Yeah, I think that was what actually Trump was most upset about, these attacks on the Agenda 2025. It's like, dude, I'm setting the agenda for my administration, not the others. Obviously, the Supreme Court ruled that the mifepristone would remain legal despite the actually basically said that the people who brought up didn't have any standing on it.
Right.
They didn't really
That's
talk about the
different.
merits of the case.
Mm-hmm.
But it seems, I don't know. I don't think there's any appetite on the court to really. Again, I think the whole standing thing is basically just to kick the can down the road and hope to try to never ever deal with the issue. I don't know if the Supreme Court would actually ever try to tackle it in a meaningful way. I think they always try to find a way to not talk about the issue. But the reality is, unfortunately, that mifepristone remains, was and is a legal way to terminate and to murder babies, and it's horrible. And we would hope that a new administration would try to prevent the interstate travel of these pills across state lines, because that we consider that to be a violation of federal law, and so we would just want federal law to be enforced.
Josh, if I could clarify this question, maybe. So JD Vance is Catholic. Mifepristone, abortion in general, obviously inherently evil. Before the Catholic Church said anything about it, but certainly a tenet of Catholic faith is that abortion is inherently evil. What would you say to someone really disappointed from someone like JD making a statement like this?
Well, basically, again, the media loves to play into this. This is a media game. They want to focus attention not on. She was trying to downplay late-term abortions. Oh, that almost never happens. And it's like, well, if it's very rare and only a few times, then let's ban it and get rid of it. They never want to have attention focused on all of the platform pieces that the Democrats have, which are considered very radical by the American people. They only want to focus on these things. Well, what do you think of, like, take, for example, birth control. We also consider that to be immoral as Catholics. And, like, do you expect our senators, to stand up and say, well, actually, I think birth control is evil, but I'm not going to talk about it politically? It's like, why even walk into this quagmire? It's like the American people are absolutely not ready for a good, robust understanding of this, because even in our own churches, in our Catholic churches, we're not having these discussions. So why would we hold senators to higher standards than bishops? That's kind of remarkable in my mind. Like, we have a lot of work to do in our own house first. That's sort of my hot take. But, like, with regards to the abortion pill, that's obviously an intrinsic evil. And he's basically not trying to address that question head on and trying to go on offense and say, look, the Biden administration wants abortions through all 9 months, and they want you to pay for it. And so he's going in attack mode rather than having to get into this discussion over a case that was pretty much, again, the Supreme Court punted on it, kicked the can down the road, didn't deal with it. So it's like, why even bother with discussing this right now when you can actually, the politics of what you can actually try to accomplish, which is, let's get a president in office who can start to turn the tide here and, make some pro-life policies at the Department of Health and Human Services.
Pardon the interruption, Erica. I saw you make some faces.
Yeah, I mean, I understand, and I admire what JD Vance is trying to do in terms of turning the conversation back onto the radical nature of the Democratic platform, which is abortion through all 9 months. the problem is that he was faced with a very specific question about mifepristone, and she knew. I mean, she was playing that. It was a media game. They want to chip away at the Republican coalition, and they know that by focusing it on something like mifepristone and forcing these men like Vance, Rubio, who have been sort of the pro-life advocates, by forcing them into a corner where they have to say either you're for or against mifepristone, that they're going to chip away at that coalition. But I think that it's a very dangerous game for JD Vance to be playing here, to say, oh yeah, mifepristone's fine because the court said. It's a dangerous game.
Well, I mean, think of it this way: you're not going to get.
I'm going to finish my thought, because you put that out there and you say that, and the base that you have come to rely on hears it, and they feel betrayed. They end up staying home. They don't get the nuance that Josh is talking about, and I think it's a dangerous game to be playing.
Well, again, JD Vance, I mean, like, look, you can try, let's say in the state of Texas or Idaho and all these different states, you can say, we're not going to allow the abortion pill to be here because it is used to murder babies. Go for it. There's not going to be 60 votes in the Senate to do anything on mifepristone to ban it. That's not going to happen anytime in the near future. And so why get into a gotcha game with the media when the real question about what to do on mifepristone is going to be whether or not we can have a future pro-life administration put regulations and restrictions on its interstate travel, that, to prevent the, pharmaceutical companies from mailing in a bunch of abortion pills to states like Idaho and Texas, which are pro-life. That's the battle. And it's like the reporter just wants to nail in on this thing. And it's like, I would just move past it, because it's a joke. These reporters, they want to box you in. They intentionally want to make it so that people, lose their minds and get upset. It's like, no one in the office is going to be as pro-life as I want them. No question. I'm not making excuses. I'm like, it's like, do I want to be disappointed? Like, I mean, what are we looking for here? I want to try to advance the agenda here. I want to try to make things, better. And so far, like, the best opportunity to do that is to have Trump elected president and try to get in some more regulations. And it's like anything else is sort of a sideshow. Like, the idea that we're going to parse every single thing and say, well, he could have handled that question better. I mean, of course, it could have been handled better. I think it's okay. A distraction, I think. Ultimately.
Right. I think it's a distraction, but I think it's okay to say that, it was disappointing. You can say it was a media trap and that was a disappointing answer at the same time. That's okay. You don't have to, push one thing or the other out of the way.
Whatever, people.
Right. And you disagree,
Whatever.
And Erica disagrees. Is okay. Like, this is what we're doing here. Yes, I think it's a media trap. No question. I think he could have answered it better. Look at how Trump handled the debate, like when he was asked about climate change or stupid stuff that really doesn't have anything to do with what we're trying to do here in America. He just circled back to what he wanted to talk about, hit on the right issues. JD did do his best to try to do that and talking about, what are we talking about here? We're talking about a radical abortion policy from Democrats. And look, Josh, I agree. I think it's natural to want to do somewhat of a purity test on all of your candidates, and you want to have people you want to look up to as paragons of virtue and things like that. I think pragmatically, you just have to look at politicians and be like, these people are not going to be these people. I mean, maybe it's more of just like a cult of personality. We want to have heroes to worship, but I don't think they're out there.
It's important to remember, Barack Obama wanted to force Catholic nuns to pay for contraception. Now you're thinking, why would a Catholic nun even need contraception? She's taking a vow of celibacy. He wanted to force Catholic nuns to pay for contraception. Republicans said that's a gross violation of religious freedom to force Catholic religious nuns to pay for contraception. The way the entire left-wing corporate media structure, along with $500 million from activist groups in the Democratic Party, presented that to the American people was, Mitt Romney wants to get rid of your birth control.
Right. Yeah.
That's what the debate was. There was so much obfuscation and downright lies. So it's easy. It's so easy to sit back and say, Republican politicians are a bunch of wimps, squishes, whatever. I get that. I think that's mostly true. But let's also not pretend that there are powerful forces who are willing to spend billions of dollars to lie to millions and millions and millions of Americans and have this discussion. Look what happened with Charlottesville. If you were to poll people and ask them what happened with Charlottesville, most people are like, yeah, Trump said both sides were kind of good. He kind of said it was kind of okay with the KKK stuff. There's so much lying that happens out there. So when elected officials who are with us like 90% of the time plus, when they kind of tiptoe on answers and don't say it perfectly well, like, look, these guys aren't I get it. I get why they're kind of walking a tightrope on this stuff. So that's all I'm trying to say. Am I making excuses for it? I'm not making excuses for it. If I had a chance to talk to these guys, I'd pull them aside and go, hey, look, I get that these lefties are throwing things at you, but that was kind of... Yeah, but I also get it. That's all I'm saying. The thing is, too,
and I completely agree, but we are talking to these people. Like, we do have people in contact with these senators, trying to help them out, answer these questions better, hold strong where they got to hold strong, and maybe give a little where they got to give a little. I mean, we're talking about the game of politics here, right? Like, the art of what's possible.
Yeah,
and I think Erica, just give Erica.
I was just gonna say, I think we agree, Josh. Like, I think we're totally in agreement here that, like, when it comes to the practical decisions voters have to make this November, that's what they need to remember, right? And it's not like, oh, I'm just gonna stay home because JD Vance did this one in interview and it bothered me, and now I'm all disillusioned, so I can't go vote this. That is unacceptable. That cannot be the response, but there are people for whom that will be the response. And so I think it is important to, like, talk about these things and to put it out there to remind people of what you're saying, that, look, we have to actually pull the lever in November, hopefully earlier, because you should vote early this time. But I think by ignoring it and saying, okay, well, give them a pass, which isn't what you're doing.
I'm certainly not.
We have to at least put it out there.
And before we move on to the next topic here, I did bring up Project 2025. I think the people that are working at Heritage are phenomenal. The way that Project 2025 has been used as this kind of like Handmaid's Tale, spooky shadow lever campaign from Democrats is pretty unbelievable.
Oh my gosh.
If you go to the website, we have a quick description. It's not enough for conservatives to win elections. If we're going to rescue the country from the grip of the radical left, we need both a governing agenda and the right people in place ready to carry this agenda out on day one of the next conservative administration. This is the goal of the 2025 Presidential Transition Project. The project will build on 4 pillars that will collectively pave the way for an effective conservative administration. And the pillars are policy agenda, personnel database, training, and 180-day playbook. I didn't see any like coup, radical, like burning down cities type stuff. So if you really want to check out what it is, I highly recommend checking it out. It's very tame in comparison to what's being spun around. I think what really scares Democrats is that someone would do what they're doing, aka get a Republican president in place and actually get personnel in place so that they can effectively execute on policy that they want to do, because that almost never happens. You almost get people in there and they don't have the right people around them. I mean, go ahead and take a look at what happened in 2016. I think the point Trump was trying to make, and I think Josh talked about this a little bit, is like, first, he's kind of taking away the sting he's just taking away the power of people being like, oh, Project 2025, we're going to use that as a sticking point. It's like, I really don't know anything about that. And he's saying, it's going to be my administration. I'm going to make the decisions. I'm not outsourcing it to Heritage. They're not making decisions. I'm making decisions. Now, 100% he's having conversations with people behind closed doors, right? I mean, even in his last administration.
I mean, if he wins, it's like, okay, guys, what do you want to do?
Exactly. So it was just so funny to me that they're using this as this big spooky. It's like, check it out. It's not that bad. I'm looking forward to the Republican convention in Milwaukee.
And you're right. The personnel is a big thing. I mean, the fact of the matter is we actually, and this sounds counterintuitive, but we need more pro-life people, more conservative people to consider a life actually working in the bureaucracy. Doesn't that sound crazy? Like, oh my gosh, that's the last thing I want to do. Well, the problem is, then like 99% of the people who work in all these agencies have pronouns in their bios, and no wonder everything veers off to the left. So hey, get a government job, it pays well, you can raise your kids, whatever, and try to turn the ship around.
Josh Mercer actively advocating for government jobs. This is the first time.
Look, I'd like to abolish a bunch of these agencies and
Absolutely.
get up and have go with the chainsaw, just like the guy in Argentina. But
Yeah, yeah.
until
Yeah,
then,
but the
you
reality
do need
is,
people in there.
yeah, this is the system that we have. And I also would love to see like a Chris Rufo kind of move where Trump gets in there and they all go away. That's not going to happen because it is a libertarian fairy tale. And so we have to start
Yes.
inhabiting the institutions with people who are, like you said, pro-life, conservative, pro-family, with brains in their heads, like people who graduate from Hillsdale or University of St. Mary, or for instance, as any of
Chargers.
these. So totally. Yeah. Consider a life in the government as a gracie.
Okay. So in the interest of time, let's look abroad here.
Oh, yeah.
So we had some
Whoa.
elections going on in Europe. So we have the Vigano story, but we also have some elections. And we did cover this in a previous episode. Basically, France chose to do a snap election. Macron chose to do a snap election because there was a big surge in support for the RN party. That's the right-wing party in France. So we kind of have the fulfillment of that now in France, and we also have elections in the UK. Broad summary, if we could get into it. Erica, what just happened in UK and France?
Okay, so what the AP wants you to think just happened in the UK and France is that this was a victory for the left, and it was the right wing has been defeated and soundly, and the mandate
right.
has been given to the left. That's not actually what happened here. So I'll do France really quickly first, because I think the UK is actually more interesting. But France, we had this sort of surprising-ish win for a party called the New Popular Front, which is a coalition of all the left wing parties. So we've got like communists,
Commies.
socialists, yeah, the Green Energy
Party,
crew,
yeah.
exactly. And they ended up becoming the dominant force in the lawmaking body. They've got about 190 seats now. Marine Le Pen's national rally, which we talked about and was expected to follow the momentum of the European Union elections and win, they actually won the most votes of any party in the snap election. They got 32.05% of the vote. So of any one party, they actually got the most votes from the French people. But this coalition of far leftists that Macron pulled together into his centrist leftist coalition, this is getting very in the weeds, together combined, they've got just under 50% of the vote. And so they were able to retain power and to move the governing. Basically, what you're seeing is this phenomenon in the UK too, where the people are voting majority to the right, but they're ending up with a government, a governing body that's going towards the left. Really interesting stuff. So to get to the UK, we had the British voters on Friday. They go in and they sharply go against the Tories, which is the Conservative Party.
Josh, it
all
just
right?
warms Josh's heart.
Yeah, I know. Josh is like, the Tories. Yeah. We'll get to you in a second, Josh. You
Yeah.
can go off. The left-wing parties, oh gosh, they now control 500 almost of the 650 seats in Parliament. The Labour Party, which is the more toward the center, this would be like the nice liberals, Democrats in our country equivalent. They've got 421 seats. This is a little bit of history for you. The Tories only got 121 seats out of the 650. The worst result since 1761.
Oof. What
Brutal.
happened around then?
That's the entire existence of the party. Oh, that was
I mean,
a
that
lot.
was literally
So
when
again,
America,
was this a defeat of
1776 is when America was born. That's
Yeah,
like right
I mean,
there.
basically it's
Jeez,
America.
man.
And so
It
they
was
lost the
before the
empire.
tea
they
was
lost
tossed in
election.
the harbor. Yeah,
Right.
It's been a
That's
while.
right. It's been a while.
Tough
yeah.
for the Tories.
So again, the AP is spinning this, and like all of the leftists, they're spinning this as like the defeat of populism. It's over, Trump Europe.
We did
You
it.
guys have lost. We did it. But that's not what happened. The voter turnout was terrible. It was about 60%. And if you looked at just Tories who turned out, it was even less. So they're just not excited about their party. The Labour Party won with just over 30%. So it's actually the worst Labour has ever, it's the least popular government that has ever been in the history of the Parliament elections as they are. But here's the interesting part. Nigel Farage, you might remember him from Brexit, of Brexit
Love
fame.
that guy.
Love him. Love him. He's like the Trump of the UK. Not as fun to watch, but no, that's not true. He's actually pretty fun to watch.
He's
His
pretty fun to watch.
Reform Party, yeah, what happened was his Reform Party basically split the vote of the Tories who actually turned out to vote in this election. So Nigel Farage is now an MP. So prepare for some awesome parliamentary floor proceedings.
Well,
Great
this is
clips
gonna
are
be
coming,
good.
journalists of the world.
Josh.
It's gonna be awesome. And I
He's
thought
so
that
good.
this was a good line from Konstantin Kisin, who's a British commentator. He said, Sir Keir Starmer, who's the new prime minister, Sir Keir Starmer is not prime minister because the British people wanted more illegal immigration, crime, and trans women in women's prisons. He's prime minister because that's exactly what voters got from the Tories, and they want to punish them for it. Bam.
Amen to that.
Yep. So Tory Josh.
People don't realize that the last election before this, Nigel Farage, and his coalition of people, he's now head of the Reform UK party.
Mm-hmm.
But the previous election, he made a deal with the Tories because it's first past the post, just like in our country, like whoever gets the most votes wins. And if there's two conservative parties and one liberal party, you could split the vote, and the liberal can win everything with 40% of the vote, and the 60% of conservatives are split between these two parties. So that could be a disaster, right? And so he agreed on his party that they would not field candidates in spots so that would enable, in other words, the Tories to win in those areas. That was the strategic move that was done, I think, at the previous election. What happened since that previous election is that the Tories, as you said, went completely left wing, didn't do anything on the gender hysteria, and they turned it up. Yeah, come on, let the boats come, let's go. And so then all these disaffected Tories and conservatives, like, this is bonkers. A lot of them stayed home, or in the case of the Reform Party, this time they said, we're not, no deal.
Yeah, no
we
deal.
are going to actually run candidates to try to remove you because we consider you to be the problem. And so what ends up happening, here's the irony here. The conservatives that you said, they're the smallest number ever now, right, in the parliament in England. These are actually the more conservatives. And of anyone, they might be more inclined and more in agreement with Nigel than the larger wimpy Rhino party, right? And so at this point, if I'm Nigel, it's like, dude, let's go. Let's have an alliance here. Let's work together and try to come up with something where we say we're going to try to petition to get out of the European human rights thing so that we don't just get tons of votes of migrants coming on shore. Do something like that. And if the Tories want to have any future, if they want to exist, they better play ball.
Yeah, and this is kind of becoming the political maneuvering episode because in France, there was a similar move, but on the left, the far left-wing Popular Front alliance with the commies and the Green Party, they conspired with the centrist party with Macron to basically drop candidates.
Same way.
They dropped almost 200 candidates in specific regions to coalesce their vote in order to go against the RN. And the RN still, that right-wing party, still picked up a majority. So what you have now in France Not majority. Most votes out of everyone, 32%.
They got polarity, right? Yeah.
Right. Polarity. And that's important, actually, because if you look in the UK and in France, we're talking about a very gridlocked, it's going to be no party's dominant. So it's going to be very hard to get a lot done.
In France, there's no party that's dominant because you have three big parties, the Macron centrists, the commies, and then you've got this large right-wing party. In England, the Labour Party has a super majority. The question is, it's probably only an inch deep because at any moment it could crack and it could be very brittle because the temptation from them might be, let's run up the scoreboard and let's try to get a lot of labor policies passed, and the voters might, the approval rating on the new prime minister, I think, is going to continue to go downward, and there's going to be a call for new elections again within a year or so.
Yeah, and I think the frightening thing is that it's sort of like visions of the future. Like, how does the West die? And I hate to get really dark on this, but it seems that the voters just keep passing power back and forth to these squishy, centrist, ineffective governments as the country kind of crumbles around them. I mean, Britain is in bad shape. We can kind of see, they're years ahead of us should our election go badly in November.
What's the lesson for the U.S.? The lesson for the U.S. is if we are our own demise if we hand power back to a senile 81-year-old or 82-year-old, however old he is.
Who has brought in 12 million illegal immigrants into our country. and there's Republicans on the Hill who are saying, let's just pass a law making it a felony to try to vote if you're not a citizen. And Democrats are freaking out. And it's because they don't want them just to pick strawberries. They're coming here. They want them to come here to vote. That's what this is all about. And so if you don't realize this could be lights out for any kind of America, as you know, like that's why people are freaking out, like, and rightly so. So, I mean, the stakes are high.
Stakes are high. But in the interest of time, I want to cover Vigano briefly. So basically, Archbishop Carlo Maria Vigano has been excommunicated officially as of July 4th. So if we get in a quick who, what, when, and where on this situation, Erica, could you just lay down the facts of what's going on with Vigano?
Yeah. So his connection to the United States, Archbishop Vigano, as some may say, was the nuncio to the United States from 2011 to 16. And he, after the McCarrick blow up, he became known as this outspoken critic of Pope Francis, the way the dicasteries were being run, sort of increasing levels of, I don't want to say hysteria, but just warnings about
he was
Pope
getting
Francis,
very apoplectic, for sure.
Very apoplectic. I love that word, Josh. Your vocabulary today in your like classical references to Shakespeare. I mean, we're just peak Josh.
I aim to please.
Sorry. So he was summoned to the Vatican. He has been challenging Francis's validity. Said of vacantism, it's all going down. He's summoned to the Vatican by the DDF on June 20th to answer questions regarding his denial of Pope Francis and his rejection of the Council Vatican II. And he refused to go. He said, the accusations leveled against me are an honor. And he goes, he's like, I do not recognize the authority of this prefect, meaning Cardinal Fernandez of the dicastery, nor do I recognize the Tucho, nor do I recognize the authority of the one who appointed him. So he doesn't recognize the authority of Pope Francis. And so proceedings continued, and he was formally excommunicated on July 4th, guilty of, quote, the reserved delict of schism. So he was excommunicated, recognizing that he had already separated himself from the Church of Christ through schism. And for those of you who need a little catechetical refresher, schism is different from heresy. So heresy is when you have this obstinate denial of some doctrine of the faith after baptism. Schism is refusal of submission to the Roman pontiff or communion with those subject to him.
That's where you can say Father James Martin is a heretic, and he is. And Vigano is schismatic because he is. Like, I agree with my friend Eric Salmon's got, he tweeted out this, when this went down. He said, very unpopular opinion among Catholics in my tribe. I think Archbishop Vigano deserved excommunication. Very unpopular opinion amongst Catholics outside my tribe. I think many other hierarchs and priests should have been excommunicated before Vigano.
Right.
Agree with you there, brother. Like maybe the president of the United States,
Yeah. And it's interesting. I was doing a little back research on, others who have been publicly excommunicated under this papacy. And the majority of them are actually Chinese archbishops and bishops who either persisted in their connections with the Chinese Communist Party, or they went ahead and performed ordinations when they'd been instructed not to by the Vatican. So there were those, but there have been priests who have been excommunicated by Pope Francis for doctrinal, so for heresy. So Father Greg Reynolds, Melbourne, Australia, advocating the ordination of women and promoting same-sex marriage. There have been those who have been executed. I didn't know it.
That's good.
Yeah, really interesting. That was in 2013. There was also a priest who was excommunicated for his role in Catholic Church sexual abuse cases scandal. That was 2014. And there was a drag queen, drag artist excommunicated in 2015 for the LGBTQ stuff. So it's there have been prosecutions at the canonical level of people with these, but then there's Father James Martin.
It's a trickle.
It's this weird Peronist.
And James Martin, they promoted.
Regime.
They promoted.
Yeah. But if I could get to the heart of this here, I think
do it.
So Eric Salmons is right. This is a very, very tribal issue, and it's it's very polarizing. You're either for or against. He's a very well-known figure. I think partially because he said a lot of truths that were unpopular at the time or were correct, and he was vindicated on, especially with a lot of the church abuse stuff. And
McCarrick especially.
He was seen as this crusader, basically, for truth when there was obvious wrongdoing that he was pointing out. And to see him kind of go the direction, I think, is tough because he has said some very apoplectic things, to use a cool word from Josh. And I think concerning to many normal Catholics, for sure. So I think while this probably feels right, I think there's a tribe of people that are never going to acknowledge that what is going on here is right. And then also we have this it feeling like a vindictive attitude towards him. Like it doesn't feel like a solemn thing that was done, especially in a lot of people in progressive circles.
Yeah.
The total celebration and just be like, he belongs in hell.
Dunking on him.
Right. Which of course is not a Catholic attitude towards anyone. We of course want all souls to get to heaven. So there's a weird strain of progressive Catholicism that truly just hates this man, hates him so much.
And they hate you too, by the way.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Which is of
they
course
hate
not a Catholic
LOOPCast.
attitude. Yeah, they probably wouldn't be too big
I'm
a fan.
just in the way.
Exactly. So I think kind of a sad day. I think a sad day. When I saw this, I was sad. I of course want him to get to heaven. I would love for the one Holy Catholic Church to be united, of course, with all the different schisms and heresies we see. I think is the idea. I mean, even like you look back to the Protestant Revolution, Martin Luther, like it'd be great to have everyone back under one roof. I think that's the hope,
one, right?
And that we may be one day, and hopefully within my lifetime. I really hope for that. I don't like. I don't have a vindictive attitude of like, screw those Protestants, screw these people, whatever. Like, man, I would love to see us to get back in community with the Eastern Church or whatever. So, sad day, and I want it all to come back. I think it's probably my final 2 cents. If anyone has any to add before we get in the Twilight Zone,
You covered it, man.
Sweet. Twilight Zone. Josh, you're up first.
I thought this was a pretty telling observation that my wife and I both noticed as well. The Daily Caller had this story about how in Hollywood, these celebrities are so crazy. And now the newest fashion accessory amongst Hollywood's most deranged moms, having kids who are trans. Wow. And they trot them out like it's the coolest thing. Oh, look, my kids are trans. You see people like Megan Fox, and other actresses. They have Charlize Theron's another one of them. They just trot out their kids. Angelina Jolie. That's like, what are the odds? If you get someone like, what is it, like 1 in 1,000 chance you have a kid that might have some, inclination towards trans, and like all of these celebrities seemingly all have that same 1 in 1,000. Like, seems like it's maybe a way to get more attention. I don't know. Robbie Starbuck brought this to the attention. He was like kind of calling Megan Fox out for this. He's that conservative social media guy. And Megan Fox was so mad that she cast like a witchcraft spell on him. It's like, what in the world?
My gosh.
So these celebrities are just totally wackadoodle. I mean, it's just, again, it's like, be careful. Do you really want to give your money to support these kind of people? And again, what are the odds that, Jennifer Lopez also has a kid with trans? Like, just amazing coincidences. It's just, my heart breaks, for anyone like this. It's like, every once in a while you see someone, oh, your kid's so cute, you should be a model. I'm like, no way.
No way.
Stay away.
There's no question that people touching Hollywood deal with the weird pressures and abuses that come with that. Like you look at the that HBO documentary on
the Nickelodeon stuff.
Kids.
Yeah.
And you're like,
that
anytime you see a child actor, almost always you're going to get sad stories about them in the future, weird pressures. Like that environment just breeds the most bizarre.
I don't know how you could watch anything on, Nickelodeon or anything anymore.
My gosh, I've been thinking about that. And that guy's still working at the studio. The guy that abused Drake and Josh kid. Which is just crazy.
Hey, my parents called it, just shout out, because back in the 80s, like all my friends are watching Nickelodeon and stuff, and my parents were like, nope, no TGIF on ABC and no Nickelodeon ever. And I was like, oh, come on, Mom. They called it. All those kids that I wasn't allowed to watch, they're all like,
my mom didn't have to worry about that for me because I was such a nerd. I was watching CNN. all day.
6-year-old Josh
you were.
with CNN.
Of course you were.
It's not a joke. I watch it. I was either watching baseball or CNN. People, why weren't you watching Fox? There wasn't Fox around then. I'm an old folk here.
Well, I always watch the Weather Channel, so maybe that's why I'm bad with predictions.
Mm-hmm. That's
Erica.
really funny. That was a good one. Good one, Tom. I missed it for a second too. All right, this is just such Twilight Zone, but I wish I could say I was surprised. I'm not. So we have over the last week or so, this series of billboards has popped up all around Western Massachusetts, and I can see them driving up 91 and back and forth to New Hampshire. And they say, avoid anti-abortion centers. Get care you can trust. They mislead you about your options if you're pregnant. And then right there on the board, we see mass.gov/AAC. And if you follow that link, it takes you to a pro-abortion you can get in touch with. Abortion industry, you can get in touch with people who will give you mifepristone, you can get in touch with Planned Parenthood, right through the government, and it is being absolutely funded by the Massachusetts taxpayers. And I hope someone sues them for slander. I have been involved in pregnancy research centers since I was a child. My mom and dad founded one in New Hampshire, and growing up, I have never seen one claim to be a medical facility, to be like, oh yeah, we have real doctors and we're going to give you total care for your pregnancy. They are resource centers. They get you in touch with medical facilities. And this is just blatant lying, because these Massachusetts politicians hate pro-life values, and they hate religious values. And they're willing to they want to destroy it by hook or by crook. And
ironically, hate choice.
Yeah.
This doesn't feel very pro-choice. It's one thing to present your solution.
Wait, they're not really pro-choice?
Yeah.
It's
what?
The ultimate hypocrisy.
It's almost like they're lying.
But the gall to take it to the next step to attack a true alternative is crazy to me. You couldn't just present yours as okay, we're Planned Parenthood. We provide this service. It's a good service. Here are the arguments for it. Not only is it that, it's and screw those other guys that lie and hate you and want to do all these other things. It's
right. And the thing
wrong.
too, in Massachusetts, there is no way under heaven that pregnancy resource centers are getting any taxpayer money. This is not even a case of, they shouldn't be, getting taxpayer money. So we just want to say pregnancy resource centers, blah, blah, blah. It's not even the case there. The Massachusetts politicians, they don't even want them to exist. They don't want these places where women can go and get diapers and have a friendly ear to talk to and have a real choice. They don't want you. They're saying you cannot even exist here in Massachusetts, and we will stamp you out. No one should be fooling themselves. This is that. Did you see the op-ed in the New York Times this weekend as well? It was on the 4th of July, and there's this picture of the Blessed Virgin Mary opening her robe to reveal her Immaculate Heart, but instead they put an American flag there. And the headline was, "Your religious values are not American values." And it's that same strain of, you have no place here in our polity. Absolutely. Sick. It is. It's sick, and not in a good way.
Not in a good way. Not good sick.
Not good sick, as the kids would say.
Yeah. But welcome all the Palestine flags, though.
Hey,
welcome all
your
the other
Palestinian
flags.
values are American values.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah, there she is.
Wow, or the trans values.
Yeah, right. Trans flag, all the other flags.
Yep.
Yeah, gross.
Proud Christian nationalist.
And they didn't. It's not like that was a patriotic Catholic who's a little too exuberant and put the American flag on Mary. I love it. It's okay, dude, that's not cool. That's the New York Times doing it to saying that's the New York Times doing it to say your values are not our values. Mm-hmm. It's bizarre.
You know what I have noticed too, though, and I've been to a lot of churches now. I love seeing the American flag in churches. Even I was at a cool just country church built in the 1800s in Wisconsin. And to see the American flag in the church, I think some people might have negative connotations to that, but the church is in America. And America is the reason the church is able to even be there. There's plenty of places in the world where you couldn't even have that. And so just I don't know, I like the idea of praying for the country.
Yeah.
I like the idea that someone, Our Lady of America, I like the idea that I can pray for my land, my space, preserve my traditions, be able to practice my religion. America's a big part of that.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's a tangent.
Dave Carlin has a great column. I'll put it in the show notes. Dave Carlin has a great column on Christian nationalism up in the Catholic Thing this morning, and it's a really good read. And he talks about how, look, when you're talking about patriotism, that is a value of the Catholic faith. It is a virtue. And can you swing too far to the right and go like all ultra nationalist? And can you swing too far to the left? Oh yeah, that's where we are. But he's talking about do the hard work of being a true American patriot, of being a Christian nationalist in the best sense. He's like, look, you're going to be a Christian nationalist. You just are. That's what the left has called you. So let's be a really good one. So anyway, I would highly recommend the column. I'll put it in the notes for everybody.
Didn't Pope John Paul II, I was just talking to Stephen about this. He was writing about patriotism in the true sense. And it would make most people uncomfortable.
Well, he was a
make a
patriotic
lot of people. Yeah, because like even look at like Poland, how much they revere
Poland,
Pope John
yeah.
Paul II.
Yeah, his
And the
book
Polish
Memory and
flag in
Identity
churches.
covers that big time.
Yeah, and you look at I mean, I'm biased, but some of those beautiful cathedrals in America are Polish cathedrals. They were built by Polish immigrants, and they're just unbelievable. Check out Sweetest Heart of Mary, any Detroit area Catholics. But okay, so my Twilight Zone to round it out here. So, of course, you know the question in everyone's mind: if Biden steps down, who's next up? It'd be Kamala Harris right now, and you know, for what is unburdened by what has been. We have an opportunity for some humdinger lines coming from the first female president. Now, personally, my favorite part about this potential is it means that it would not be Hillary Clinton, which would be pretty hilarious to see Hillary Clinton have to act like she's happy about this. Would be pretty awesome. But my Twilight Zone is
that's like that's a massive silver lining in an otherwise
Very dark cloud.
Kamala Harris is
Exactly.
president. Kamala Harris would be disastrous president. The only good side effect, I agree with you, it would make Hillary so mad.
It would make her so mad. Just the fireworks from that would be awesome. But if I could get that tweet, the Gavin Newsom tweet pulled up here. So New York Post writes an article, America may soon be subjected to the country's first DEI president, Kamala Harris.
True.
Now, we're gonna analyze that headline. But first, Gavin Newsom tweets, 1, at Joe Biden is our next president. We'll see about that. And then 2, this is straight up racist.
Oh my gosh.
Interesting, Gavin. So first thing to note, President Biden, you can go find the quote, said, I'm going to choose a woman as my vice president for diversity. There's a direct quote from Joe Biden. You can go find it.
Multiple times.
Multiple times. Basically insinuating that DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, I'm choosing someone based on a characteristic that they can't control. Although I guess if you ask progressives, men can become women now. But he chose a woman, and he also specifically chose a black woman. So by the definition of DEI, this is a DEI hire. No question. I mean, this is just is what it is.
Same thing with the Supreme Court pick he had. He said he was going to pick a black woman.
Correct.
Right from the
And
start.
if you can articulate what I just articulated, you're racist. If you also say that you're colorblind and you don't see this, that's also racist because you wouldn't be committed to diversity and equity and inclusion.
It's actually
because you'd
simpler
be
than that.
choosing-
It's simpler than that, Tom. If you support this and support her, then you're not racist. If you recognize that this is what's happening and you don't like her, then you're racist. That's all it is.
Yeah.
But what really
and-
matters is whether or not you support her or not.
Right. Although funny, a lot of Democrats don't even support her, which the amount of memes I saw about what is unburdened by what has been, it's been so good. I could just do a whole episode on the memes.
Unburdened by
so
what
funny.
has been.
I mean, her word salads are.
When has
unreal.
she had a competitive election, though? I mean, that's the thing. That's why she ran for president, just like Joe Biden did in 2020, and she dropped out before it even got to Iowa. Like, she did so terribly. And that's because she hasn't had a competitive election in all of her Senate races. And as Attorney General for the state, like when has she had a really tough race where she's had to work hard? You have to go back almost all the way back to when she was running for district attorney of San Francisco. That was a hard race, and she won that one. But that's been a long time. And so I think that's the part of the problem, is that you just kind of go through the motions and say things because she represented California in the Senate. Like, well, what could she possibly do to get herself kicked out of that seat? And then she moves to VP.
Yeah, good point. Well, hey, fun to be back. Hope you guys had a great break. We're ready to get after it this week. So if you want to help out the program, subscribe, like this episode, share us around. reviews, Apple Podcasts and Spotify. We appreciate those very much. And then you can email me, loopcast@catholicvote.org. I have a big inbox pile up.
A lot of
on my
work
time
today.
off, so I'll be responding to those. If you want to support the program, the best way to do so is to join the Champions Club. You can do that at www.catholicvote.org/champions. We appreciate that very much. The only reason we can do this is because of our monthly supporters. So thank you for everyone who is a champion right now and consider becoming one. And then also you can pray for us, St. Thomas More, Our Lady of Guadalupe, St. Fidelis. Pray for us. And we will see you guys on Wednesday. Thanks for joining the show. Peace.